What's up, everybody? Nate here. So the Great Resignation, or Big Quit, just got a whole lot bigger in the United States, as around 4.35 million Americans voluntarily quit their jobs back in February 2022. And currently, there are around 11 million job openings in the United States and around 6 million people who are still unemployed. That means there is about 1.8 jobs for just about every unemployed American. How do you get 0.8 of a job? This whole situation goes a lot bigger than just Americans quitting their jobs. Now, this has massive implications for our United States economy and monetary policy set by the Federal Reserve. We are going through a huge culture shift in the United States right now, and even though people are quitting their jobs en masse and finding new ones, a lot of millennials and Americans are pretty upset with the jobs they're getting. And now they're quitting those jobs too. So today, I want to talk all about the Great Resignation, or Big Quit, in the United States. Why are workers quitting? What is coming next? And how is this all going to shape up and affect our economy? But before I get into all of that, do me a quick favor and hit smash or destroy that thumbs up button below and ring that notification bell too. Both of those two things are completely free and they help to show me that you like this video and that you want to see even more just like it. Thank you so much for doing that. And now let's talk all about the Great Resignation and jobs in the US. So this whole situation has been going on a long time now. It didn't just come up in 2022. We actually saw millions of Americans quit their jobs all the way back in the beginning parts of 2021. And by the summer of last year, we had millions of Americans quitting their jobs, with some estimates saying that we've seen 30 to 40 million people voluntarily quit their jobs over the last year and a half. So to kind of help you understand what's happening now and what's going to happen in the future, we've got to look at what's already happened in the past. So back in 2020, the pandemic started, and suddenly millions of Americans were out of a job due to economic lockdowns and social distancing orders. People were scared that they weren't going to get a paycheck, and millions of Americans and businesses also didn't have any savings in order to protect themselves. This ultimately led the federal government to print trillions of dollars worth of stimulus. This stimulus was going to be direct payments to Americans, and it was also going to help out businesses so they could kind of stay afloat even though no one was working. Now, this is where the big psychological shift really started. We had the Great Resignation kind of beginning because now Americans were getting paid, but they weren't working. We basically saw a shift in worker mindset. So the things that workers were looking for and the competitiveness at jobs was all of a sudden changing for businesses too. And not everyone lost their jobs during this time. A lot of Americans ended up working from home. So things began to shift as the pandemic shifted, but now we are in 2022 and the pandemic is at an all-time low, according to some experts. That means the Great Resignation is starting to shift too, and you'd think as things started to open back up and businesses got back to, well, business as usual, the Great Resignation would start to go away. However, it has been the exact opposite. We are still seeing millions upon millions of Americans quitting their jobs every single month. And I don't think this trend is going away anytime soon. And here's why. For one, we have seen a big culture shift in the United States. What workers are looking for is not what they were looking for in the past. Workers are looking for better pay and better benefits right now. In addition, they want better working conditions, a better work-life balance overall, so they don't have to just feel like they're working and doing none of the things that they love. Now, of course, workers have wanted all of this for a very long time, but the pandemic really started it because now workers have all of the power. Businesses are struggling, so they're constantly having to give workers a lot more in order to meet their demands. And that's going to help out everything in our economy because now you have workers who are feeling more fulfilled, better paid, and businesses who are able to produce all of the goods and services that we need. But the big issue right now is the competitiveness from one business to another is huge. You have a ton of millennials who are now regretting getting the job that they have now and voluntarily quitting and searching for a better one. The reason for this is because businesses are starting to give out better pay and better benefits. Some businesses are doing a better job of this, and millennials and Americans are going towards those jobs. Now, this is a really interesting phenomenon because some businesses are able to give a lot more to their employees and future employees. Some businesses are just not set up that way. So now you have some businesses who are are failing and others who are prospering just because of their profits. With that being said, you also have millions of Americans who have been working from home for a very long time now. I talked about this in a previous video, but there are thousands of companies making their employees go back to the office. And literally for no other reason other than they don't trust them and they want to bring back that office culture that was present pre-pandemic. I guess so you and Johnny can talk about sports at the water cooler? I don't know, looking back for me, office culture always seemed really toxic because you had these kind of groups and cliques, kind of like you see in high school, that form, and ultimately it's harder to get things done, and you tend to stay longer at the office so you can get all of your work done instead of taking some of that work back home and then working even more. At the same time though, working from home is a little bit difficult as well because there's really no separation between your office life and your home life. I mean, literally, your office is your home. That can cause workers to work even later in the day, but I think the difference is workers work when they want to, and businesses are just going to have to be a little bit more lenient when it comes to deadlines. Obviously, you can't be lenient on every single deadline, but for the most part, employees are now choosing their own schedules. So I'd say mental health is definitely improving because of that. Keeping that aspect in mind, workers are also looking for less work. They don't want to work to the bone every single day because that's bad for your work-life balance and your mental health. And this kind of comes into the competitiveness of businesses because now businesses are going to be offering workers fewer hours and better pay because they know that's what people are looking for. And I know that's kind of like everyone's dream. They want to work less and make more, but some businesses just aren't able to do that. Some absolutely are though, so they're actually having fewer people, but they get the same amount of work done. Now ultimately, what is this going to mean for the future of our economy and the future of the jobs market? Well, first and foremost, you're going to continue to see businesses get even more competitive with one another. Before this whole pandemic started and this great resignation really began, businesses didn't really need to be competitive because there were so many Americans that were applying for one particular job. If the person didn't like the benefits and the pay and the work-life balance that a business was putting out, then the business simply just passed on that applicant. They hired somebody who was willing to do all of those same things for less. But now the general consensus is that all of the working populace has the upper hand, meaning it's the workers saying they don't want that business, which means the business needs to do more in order to incentivize people to come to them. So better pay, better benefits, and better work-life balance is definitely going to continue in the future because that's what workers want. And at the end of the day, until we have full-blown automation for everything, businesses need people in order to get things done. But what's also super interesting is millennials have talked about getting a job during the pandemic after quitting their previous one and now regretting that decision. The biggest reason is because they saw no career growth in that job. Americans and millennials, they want to feel loyal to something. They want to work at a job where they're respected and there is a clear path to get higher in the company. A lot of the jobs though, even though they may offer better pay and better benefits and better work-life balance, there might not be any opportunity for you to go higher. Meaning you're basically stuck in that position. So Americans and millennials that have ambition and they want to go further up in the company, well, they just can't do that at some jobs. So Americans and millennials are quitting because of that as well, which is pretty huge because this is something that businesses have often overlooked for a very long time. The career ladder just wasn't built properly. So businesses are also going to have to incentivize workers on this front as well. They're going to have to look at how people can advance in their own company and then build opportunities for people to do that. And I think this kind of works for both employees and businesses because for employees, it builds that loyalty. And it's a lot easier. You don't have to find a new job. You can get something that you're comfortable with and you stay at the same company for a very long time. That's good for businesses because now they know you are loyal and that you're willing to do the work and they're comfortable with you as well. But if that doesn't exist, then workers are out of there. And this is also a big deal in terms of economics as well because we have the Federal Reserve keeping a close eye on employment numbers because that heavily dictates the direction of their monetary policy. Just a few weeks ago, the Federal Reserve said they were going to immediately start raising their benchmark interest rates, starting with a 0.25 basis point hike. Now that's not a lot, and it's basically on par with what experts were expecting. Right now, the Federal Reserve is interested in achieving maximum employment in the United States. That basically means that everyone in the United States who is able to work is working. It's a little bit different than your unemployment rate because that measures how many people were recently just fired from their job. It doesn't necessarily measure the amount of people who are quitting in mass. And like I said at the beginning of this video, we currently have 11 million job postings, which means there are 11 million people that we need to get employed in our economy. I mean, not exactly, because there's 6 million people who are unemployed and 1.8 million who have continuing claims for unemployment. But the bottom line here is that if those jobs are filled, then the Federal Reserve can have a much better outlook on our economy. They can make some positive strides towards interest rates and monetary policy because they see that everyone is working. And in theory, if everyone is working, then they're able to get aggressive with inflation because people can afford it. The Great Resignation, though, kind of throws a wrench in their plans because if not everybody is working, then not everybody is getting a paycheck. That's a problem because in order for our economy to succeed, we kind of need people to get a paycheck. This entire situation could basically make them reassess their entire interest rate and monetary policy strategy. And that could mean that inflation goes way higher in the United States or goes down depending on what the jobs market looks like. Because the job market, while not directly applicable, basically shows you how healthy your economy is. And with inflation sitting at around 7.9% back in February 2022, you can bet the Federal Reserve wants to do anything and everything that they can in order to lower it this year. But to me, I don't think this Great Resignation is going anywhere. I think this mindset and the culture of work and labor in the United States is going to continue to benefit the worker in the future. Like I said, companies need people, and in that light, they can't exactly trick workers into getting a job that has no career path, not as good of benefits as they wanted, and not as good of pay. In addition, if you hire workers and say that you'll be able to work fully remote and at home for the long term, then you better continue to do that. I have heard of countless companies saying that you can work from home, and then 6 months in, they basically flip the script and say it's time to come back to the office. Well, guess what? You're gonna have half your workforce leave and quit voluntarily because you basically lied to them. Millennials and Gen Z are increasingly saying that it's okay to leave a job 6 months to a year after you're hired. Yes, they want to be loyal, but they want you to be loyal to them as well. It's kind of a two-way street, and if these businesses are not building that expectation from the get-go, then workers are just going to continue to quit, and they're going to search for companies that are. Now, for the overall jobs market, that means businesses who are not doing all of the right things to bring in employees and raise their pay and benefits and work-life balance and offer career growth opportunities are going to fall by the wayside, and they're eventually going to go bankrupt. Nobody wants to work for these types of companies, so if automation doesn't take over, they're basically screwed. And don't get me wrong, while I think that there have been great strides by a lot of companies over the past 2 years, we are still nowhere near where we need to be. Companies need to do even better to bring employees on and then keep them. I think that will come with time though, as workers can't possibly have all of this leverage forever. Eventually businesses are going to start getting a little bit more as automation and some workers return to those companies. But right now, the Great Resignation is getting bigger. And I think that's opened up a lot of people's eyes to changes in the workforce and labor culture in the United States. I mean, right now, with markets basically exploding over the last 2 years, people are realizing that maybe they don't need a full-time job in order to make money. What they really need is assets. People are using tools like the stock market and real estate in order to build wealth instead of a traditional 9-to-5 job. I wish it didn't take a pandemic for people to realize that, but here we are. And eventually something's got to give because inflation is going up and things cost way more than they did in 2020 and in 2021. So workers are eventually going to need to get a paycheck and find new ways to beat inflation. Jobs traditionally are not the way to do that. However, the workforce is growing and they might start to push companies into bigger raises and bigger benefits so that they can start beating inflation with their own career. Yes, that's going to hurt businesses, and it's going to hurt profits, and it's going to slow down companies growing in the United States, but workers don't really care about that. They want to take care of themselves and their families. And that's not such a bad thing, because if workers and families are taken care of, then they are more incentivized to go out and buy things. So I think eventually companies will see those profits return. But this grudge match between businesses and people is not going anywhere anytime soon. And the Great Resignation is only going to continue to grow. But now I want to hear from you on this issue. What do you think about the Great Resignation and more Americans quitting their jobs in 2022? Is this something that is going to go away, or is the Great Resignation and this big quit here to stay, as our work culture and labor market is shifting for the better in the United States? Whatever your thoughts are, leave a comment below before you go. But that is it for today's business and financial news breakdown. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to stay up to date with all of the top business and financial news from around the country, our team puts together a free daily newsletter, and you can subscribe to it by clicking the link in this corner right here. And if you want to stay up to date with me and everything else happening in the business and financial world, I'm putting out updates 7 days a week over here on this channel, and I've actually got another update ready for you right here, so be sure to check that out before you go. That is it for me, everybody. Be kind out there, and I'll see you all in the next one.